First, I do apologize. Earlier we had some serious difficulty with software, and we are back. Today we are discussing the state of the Republic. But first, a couple of news. We were earlier discussing about Donald Trump at a rally in Montana yesterday, Friday, September 7, in which his rallying theme was the possibility of his impeachment if Democrat takes over the houses in the midterm election. It is unprecedented time. It is not normal. On another piece of news, Republican constituents still in the dark. Most Republicans, especially those who continue to support Donald Trump, live very largely in the dark despite the wide availability of the internet. The cause of the problem is not lack of information, but rather it is an inclination to seek for sources of information which support their preset views, however false and misleading. As such, Trumpublicans are more inclined to reject any information which does not support their views, does not please them, or is critical of Donald Trump. In fact, they do not have to look far. Fox propaganda network, which is known and referred to by most as Fox News, is the major source of misinformation, disinformation, distorted information, wrong information, and even outright lies. Other sources of information such as Rush Limbaugh, Breitbart, InfoWars have all contributed greatly to nurture and preserve the dummification of the Republican Party. The problem is exacerbated by the GOP legislators who also push false narrative in order to consolidate their base, although it is to the detriment of the country. Such posture on the part of the Republican leaders and the GOP propaganda network constitute the main conduit to taking the country down the gutter. Who in the Republican Party will muster enough courage now that John McCain has passed to shine the light for the Republican constituent? As of this moment, most in the Republican Party still live in complete darkness. I'll be right back.
Go. I'm not going to try to get into the mind of Donald Trump because I don't think there's a whole lot of space there. I think he's a kook. I think he's crazy. I think he's unfit for office. And I'm a Republican and he's not. He's not a conservative Republican. He's an opportunist. He could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and 25 or 30% of the people would still follow him because he gives voice to their anger and their frustration. But he's not fit to be President of the United States.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special. Right, Bill? I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special for a limited time.
Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the country. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accused the media of fabrication before he moved to censor everything that was printed. This move is very standard for any authoritarian, for any dictator. We knew before it happened that Donald Trump was not fit for the Oval Office. But we stay silent in the name of fairness. We knew before it happened Donald Trump would be a disaster for the world. But we stay silent in the name of fairness. We knew beforehand Donald Trump is a racist, but we stay silent in the name of fairness. We, members of the media, can no longer stay silent. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. Let us from now on hold the Trump administration accountable. It is our job. It is the only reason to be in this business. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent, it is necessary, it is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
Don't go anywhere. The Fourth Branch program will return in just a moment.
Join me here on the Fourth Branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday. Welcome to the State of the Republic. The country is in a very tumultuous state. It is not because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump didn't cause that. But the presidency of Donald Trump exacerbates the problem. It is not with the election of Donald Trump that the country has been divided. It is not with the election of Donald Trump that racism has been in the country. It is not with the election of Donald Trump that we have had neo-Nazis and everything else that the country is currently facing, that we, the people, feel is not normal, it's not appropriate. But one thing is certain, it is the very fact that the current state of affairs is there because of what has always been around, which is a huge divide between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. Now, granted that there are, or there were, I should say, some major differences between those two parties. But for the past 2 decades, however, the lines between those two parties are pretty blurred. But there is one thing that remains almost the major culprit for anything wrong in the country, anything that's going wrong in the country. Now, if you are paying attention, the problem seems silly, and the reason I said that is because it almost boiled down to two children that are arguing about something that if they agreed on, it would have been beneficial for both. Now, I'm going to take a very simple example before I delve into the purpose of this episode for the program today. When Mitt Romney was governor of Massachusetts, he implemented in the state what you would call a universal healthcare system for the state, of course. Now, prior to doing that, or during the process of doing that, there were a lot of pushback, a lot of reluctance from people on the other side, and also from some of the people of his party. But he pressed forward, and before he left the governorship of Massachusetts, the whole state was covered. Everybody in the state had health care. On the national stage, he was applauded for that. Now, when Obama became president in 2009, he tried to model a universal health care at the Massachusetts way, a la Mitt Romney, if you like, for the nation. Now, I don't have to go through the whole process of explaining what really happened, because there are plenty of information and document, even as of date, as late as last year, when Republicans tried to repeal Obamacare, and John McCain was the deciding vote which prevented that act from being passed. Now, I mentioned that in order to illustrate how silly it is that you have two major parties. There are a few smaller one, Green Party, etc., in existence in the United States, but they usually do not have much impact. So the Republican and the Democrat parties are the two major parties that have been fighting for, I'm not even sure what, because it seems that the fight that exists between Democrat and Republican are simply exist as a tool for election of legislators, because in this example that I take, you are going to see that it's almost, you can almost sense it, that if there is a much better chance, a greater likelihood, if Republicans come up with something that Democrats judge beneficial for the country as a whole, you can almost bet that Democrats are gonna go along with it. And you've seen it in plenty of examples through decades. But if Democrats come up with something, no matter what it is, in fact, even if that a piece of legislation, even if that whatever Democrat bring to the table, even if it were embraced by Republican, even if Republican wanted it, liked it, but for the simple reason of going against Democrat, they would go against it, no matter how beneficial it is for the country. So in a sense, you can say that Republicans are less likely to do things beneficial for the country than Democrats are. This is not just an opinion. Take any issue whatsoever, whether it's as a matter of fact, on a local level, the dynamic may be different. Meaning, from a state perspective, you still get those back and forth between Democrat and Republican, but there is a greater likelihood that there is a give and take between those two parties back and forth. But on the national stage in Washington, it is almost written in stone that if Democrats come with something like the universal health care, Obamacare if you like, that there will be pushback. And what makes it even sillier is the fact that if you're going to make an argument against something or anything, if your argument is sound, if your argument rests on something solid, then you don't have to resort to trickery, you don't have to resort to falsehood, to misinformation in order to convince or to convey that. Now, you may not necessarily know what this is about, what am I talking about, but during the time that Democrats were pushing Obamacare, there were a number of groups in the Republican Party that were pushing against Obamacare, not in a fair way, but by providing Republicans, constituents, with false information. I don't know if you remember the death panel, for instance. It was a propaganda pushed by Republicans. Sarah Palin was actually behind that, and amplified at Fox, which does not care that the information is not a news information, but rather distortion of the policy that Obama was trying to pass. But again, you already know that at Fox there is no such thing as news. So Fox amplified that to the Republican constituency, and what that ended up doing is rallying a group of people who would have embraced Obamacare, Democrat or Republican, because what Obamacare proposed to do would be beneficial not just for Democrat but for the whole country. For instance, under Obamacare, well, prior to Obamacare, children who reach the age of 21, well, children who reach the age of 18 could not be covered, but would continue to be covered until age 21 if they are in college, if they were in college. Under Obamacare, children under the age of 26, whether you are in college or not, will continue to be covered under Obamacare. Now, no matter how it doesn't matter how you spin that, it is good for everybody. I'm certain that it's not just Democrats who have children under 26 who go to college, or under 26 who finish college but still living under their parents' roof. So in other words, if you take that aspect of the policy, there is no reason anybody would go against it. But unfortunately, because of the misinformation, the propaganda that were put out to tell people that Obamacare was bad, then a number of Republicans, unfortunately without any good information, because the place where they get their information is on Fox, and you would be hard pressed, it would be more possible for you to be struck by lightning than going to Fox and get news information without any kind of distortion. So that caused a number of Republicans who would have supported the policy now going against and protesting against it. Now, here's another aspect of the policy that Obama put in the act is, before Obamacare, to get coverage insurance if you have a pre-existing condition, you were out of luck. Meaning either the insurance company would charge you an arm and a leg as premium, which most people would not be able to afford, or the insurance company would deny you coverage altogether. And there are documentation that clearly show you that even people who had insurance would sometimes be denied coverage because 2, 3, 6 months paying their premium, the insurance company would come back and say, well, we made a mistake because you were covered, we didn't know that you had pre-existing condition. Now, just a side note, that one of the pre-existing conditions that sometime insurance company evoke was a woman who is pregnant. I'm not kidding. Now, I said all that not to discuss Obamacare, but to make the point that the reason that it seems as if there is so much difference between Democrat and Republican, it's not because such differences, there is that much difference, it's because there seems to be almost a movement in the Republican Party whose only job is to rile up Republican constituents so that they never go along with anything that Democrats propose. So, in all fairness, when you think about it, Obamacare would be a great thing for every American, for the simple reason that if you have pre-existing condition or whether you have or not. But if you do have pre-existing condition, one, you don't have to worry about not getting coverage, because now insurance company cannot refuse you coverage. Two, they cannot charge you an arm and a leg, because now with Obamacare there is a cap. There cannot, because Obamacare set rules, set guidelines, set regulation that says insurance company cannot go above that threshold. And three, now there is no cap as to coverage. In other words, before Obamacare, for instance, if you have a loved one who is terminally ill, now you would know that at some point the coverage stops because there is a cap. I think some insurance used to put $1 million as a cap, some a little bit less than that, but with Obamacare there was no cap, which means as long as your loved one or you are going through care, whether hospice or hospital, you will be covered under Obamacare. Now, this is not something that done just for Democrats, because obviously Democrats would not be the only group who would benefit of this type of insurance. But again, the movement was to rile up Republican constituents and say that Obamacare is bad for the country. Now later on they come up with Obamacare is going to kill jobs. There were a bunch of misinformation that the Republicans bring to the table in order to kill the idea of passing Obamacare. Now you have to understand that this is something that Republicans considered, flirted with, and even saw that as a good idea until it was introduced by Obama. That was just a way to explain to you that the difference between those two parties is not that great. Members of the Republican Party, yes, there are groups, super PAC, whatever name that they carry, but it's their mission in life is not simply to support Republican in terms of promoting a candidate or campaigning for a candidate, but they also have this nefarious mission to kill any possible activity that could be beneficial for the whole country, Democrat and Republican alike, but come up with a message that discourages Republican from supporting it. Now I don't know about you, but that is Machiavellic, don't you think? That we belong to the same country, we are on the exact same boat, but for the sake of being able to score a political point, there are political machines, mostly on the Republican side, that would prevent a policy from going forward because it is being proposed by a Democrat. Not because it is bad, it is because it is being proposed by a Democrat. As I mentioned earlier, you look at through years, decades in this country, through many Republican administrations, and you will find that Democrats have are more inclined to go along, and indeed have gone along with legislation proposed by Republicans, but for reasons that are beyond understanding. Even when Republicans recognize that something is good for the country, they will bring to the table not information but misinformation, and that's where you have to realize there is something wrong with their argument, because that's why I call it silly. Because if I am going to go out and it is forecasted that it's going to rain, then it makes perfect sense for me to have an umbrella. But if the idea of having an umbrella is proposed by a Democrat, you can almost rest assured Republican would go as far as telling you that it's bad to go out because it's going to rain. Not only that, but it's dangerous to be out there on the rain. And they may even come up with the idea that if you on the rain today, there is some forecast that you may get sick. Now, this is what I meant by Republican using nefarious, Machiavellic actions in order to discourage the Republican constituent from going along with a proposed legislation by a Democrat. So if you believe something is bad, then you can argue on the merit of that. I think everybody would agree that if something is bad, it's bad, then you can argue on the merit. But if you have to provide the constituent with false information, distorted information, then automatically the constituent, unfortunately, usually Republican constituent rely on their legislators, and the second place that they rely on, or rather the first place, is on Fox, which unfortunately do not give information, but they amplify falsehood, they amplify distorted information. So the Republican constituent are dummified and are not able to make a proper decision because of the false information provided to that group. Now, why in the world do legislators, and you have a network which is supposed to educate people, Fox, which is supposed to educate people, but instead use that platform to amplify falsehood, to amplify the distortion of facts? But what isn't even worse is whenever there is something like yesterday, for instance, if you tune into Fox, you would have not known that Manafort was found guilty and Michael Cohen actually pleaded guilty in the Southern District Court of New York. So in a sense, if you are watching Fox, it is a guarantee that you're getting dumber by the day. Not just because they don't give information, but because they also give false information. You can rest assured, if you are tuning to Fox and something said by a Democrat or proposed by a Democrat would be distorted to a point where you would be angry at the fact as to why in the world someone elected to serve the people would do something like that. Now, if it's something bad that's done by Republican, you would not hear it at Fox. So in a sense, you're almost living in a world where you have no idea Republicans are doing things that's bad for the constituent, that's bad for you, that's bad for the state you live in, but you only hearing that Democrats are doing things that are bad, even when in fact it's distorted information that are being passed to you. So two points rather to for that particular conversation. The conversation actually is leading towards someplace else, but I just want to make that point as to why we seeing the country is in the state it is today. It's not by sheer accident. It's because there has been. It's not that Democrats are not guilty of some of the problem, but it's concentrated very, very much on the Republican side, that they would rather the country not benefit of something than going along with the legislation, a piece of legislation proposed by a Democrat. So why do they do that? It's not something that I pull out of a hat. You spend 5 minutes at Fox, you will be able to verify the information that I gave you. That something that comes from a Democrat will be discussed at Fox, but distorted. You would never hear information coming to Fox from a Democrat that just unfiltered. It has to be filtered, distorted, and presented to the audience. Now, if it's something from a Republican, they pass it to you and they amplified it as something extremely good. But if it's something bad that's done by a Republican, you will find out that you tune into Fox, it's not there. Yesterday, two major pieces of news happened. Manafort, former campaign manager of Trump, was convicted of 8 counts of crime in the District of Virginia. In New York here, not only Michael Cohen pleaded guilty, but implicated the President of the United States in the crime that he committed. At Fox, you don't hear any such thing. So, in other words, you are misinformed, or you're not informed at all about particular aspect of what's going on in the country. So, why do Republicans go against everything Democrats do, even if it's good for the country? The two examples that I just gave you about Obamacare, no matter how much you hated Obama, you cannot tell me that those two benefits of Obamacare would not serve you, serve your family. But the reason that maybe you never have a chance or you never took advantage of it is because in your state, the governor decided for you that they would not sign up on Obamacare. Now, why do Republicans do that? Why exactly do they do that? Because it just doesn't make sense. It seems silly that it's one country. It's not two countries. Yes, it's two political parties, but it's one country. If something is gonna benefit the constituents in your state, why exactly do you prevent it from happening? Why do you prevent your constituent from taking advantage of that? Just because it is proposed by a Democrat. It's something that I just cannot really wrap my brain around. But it's not a mystery. We know exactly why it's happening. Don't go anywhere. We will come back to discuss the detail of why do Republicans oppose even what's good for their constituent when it is proposed by a Democrat. Why? The performance in Helsinki was enough to drop Donald Trump's support to zero. Because anybody who is a patriot, an American patriot, should not have any reason whatsoever to still stand behind the president, the first person whose primary job is to elevate the country, but did just the opposite. Nobody should have been behind that person. And yet we have Republicans who still defending, arguing their support for Donald Trump. Seriously? Really? What the hell? Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan special for a limited
Wayfair, let me show you how I do my thing. Check it. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair it all. Here we go now. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that. Wayfair my this, Wayfair my that.
Don't just shop for your home. Wayfair your home. Find everything you need and more at wayfair.com today.
I do thank you very much for watching this version of the 4th Branch Project. The 4th Branch Project is a project that is launched in the hope of achieving a more perfect union. And the major obstacle that we have found that has been considered a stumbling block to achieve such union is ignorance. Ignorance is the biggest threat to any democracy. So we have launched the Fourth Branch project so we can educate with the ultimate objective of reaching enough individuals who are as concerned as we are about the state of the country, and make the effort of pressuring their elected official, whether it's congressmen or senators, so that they can implement legislations, passed acts which benefit the country. I hope to see you next time. Have a good afternoon.